evening, everyone. I know we're very excited tonight. It's very hard to settle down when you're this excited. Good evening, everyone. Now, Mark, you're going to have to pipe down. Hi, I'm Kate Markert. I'm Executive Director here at Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all here tonight, and especially those who are viewing from the simulcast. Before we continue, you know what I'm going to ask you. Please be sure your phones are silenced. Mine is. Believe it or not, we've made it to the end of February. And has it been the weirdest weather ever? Although, I don't mind this kind of weird, I have to say. It's absolutely great. But tonight does mark the last of our Great Homes and Gardens series, the last day of February, the last of our Great Homes and Gardens series. But all throughout March, we're going to continue to explore lavish homes and beautiful tables and artful living all throughout the spring. So I hope that you've all had the opportunity to see the artistic table, right? You have? I can't imagine you haven't. Just fantastic designs created by our 6 very talented contemporary designers and, of course, our own Hillwood curators. So beginning in March, we'll explore all facets of entertaining. So it's late March and into April. We will be looking at table decorations, floral designs, the important role entertaining plays in diplomacy with another lecture series. So I invite you to sign up for that series tonight because our monthly email blast goes out tomorrow. So you're hearing about it ahead of time, and you know what happens when the email blast goes out. The theater really sells out very quickly. So I'm sure you all know you can sign up online at hillwoodmuseum.org, or you can visit the front desk tonight if you like. And I know this is my choir, and I know just about every one of you, but I do want to remind those of you, the 2 or 3 of you who may not be members yet, that you really do get discounts in the store, and I've seen a lot of bags coming out of that store, so I know you know about our museum shop and how fabulous it is. So if you haven't already become a member, I hope you'll do so soon. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, although I'm fairly certain he needs probably no introduction to any of you. Inspired by acres of lush Virginia countryside, Barry Dixon is known for a distinct aesthetic that blends Western styles with global influences. From a childhood, and I did not know this, spent abroad in India, Pakistan, Korea, New Caledonia, and South Africa. Wow. See? You think you know a guy. You think you know a guy. With projects spanning the world, Barry imagines interiors that infuse artifacts and antiques with present-day motifs, all preserving the history and personality of the home's owners and their treasures. His exclusive collections include furniture, lighting, and accessories for arteriors, showroom design and products for Fortuny, custom furniture and lighting for Everett, fabrics and trims for Vervin, upholstery for Tomlinson, and the Naturals Color Collection by Barry Dixon for C2 Paint. This year, he will introduce his first collection of wall coverings with Vervin. Barry's work is featured in Barry Dixon Interiors and Farrow and Ball, The Art of Color, both by Brian Coleman and Edward Adio, as well as Barry Dixon Inspirations and Fortuny Interiors by Brian Coleman and Eric Kowalsvik, a very, very talented photographer. Barry lives and works in his 1907 Edwardian estate, Elway Hall, located on over 300 acres of farmland in the heart of Fauquier County, Virginia's horse country. So please join me in welcoming Barry Dixon.
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure to be back here. I was here we were trying to discern how long ago it was. I think it was 6 years ago. I had the opportunity, the first opportunity of speaking here to this group, I think maybe from this very lectern. So it's a pleasure to be back. Nice to be with you all. Thank you for coming out on a slightly chilly, but far better than many of the other February nights that we've had so far this month. So thank you for coming and joining us, and we hope you're going to enjoy the talk. What I'm going to talk today about is, I don't know, you're here in this beautiful home, and it's surrounded by the most exquisite gardens. And we know that Mrs. Post must have been inspired by everything she saw through her windows, everything she saw in her walks in her gardens, as to what she might do inside. We do this quite often with our clients. I would say that there's not a project we've ever worked on that we did not consider the exterior, what the homes see through their window eyes. How do we tether place inside to the exterior? How do we remind ourselves at night of what everything is outside during the day when that's there? How do we bring some of that in so that there's a certain constant throughout the home, throughout the time of day? So what we're going to do is celebrate that, and I'm going to break it up into a few parts. I'm going to talk first about how I look to nature for inspiration on some of the products that we've been designing recently for some of the companies that Kate was mentioning, because I think it starts there. I think that's the nucleus of creation, and some of these things that are garden or exterior inspired come into collections, but then they go into homes where they may be needed, like ingredients that you might put into a recipe or a cake, except maybe they're not all so savory to the tongue, but we hope they're savory to the eye. So what we're starting with here, this is just one of the ads that was being run by Vervain, which is also Stroheim and Roman and Fabricut. It's a parent company, Fabricut, and this is sort of their couture line within that group. We launched it in Europe, and they took me to Russia, and I did talks in St. Petersburg and Moscow on that line, and now we're launching it fully across here. We've actually started launching it in some of the showrooms here in the States. And some of these are derivatives of some of the fabrics we had, and others are just all new creations. And we're going to talk a little bit about what does inspire us. I live in an inspiring place. This is my home, Elway Hall. I wake up in these little windows that you see at the top, and I look out over really a fairy tale world every morning. And what I see, even the same view, seen from the same window, can be very different every day. I could look out. I've been taking, this is a shot that was done by a professional photographer. I couldn't take that one. But these that you see, I just took with my cell phone. There's no trickery, there's nothing added. So this is a fall morning, and you've got some frost on the lawn, and you see all these Adirondack chairs lined up and looking at a stone wall that faces the front meadow toward a dairy that's over there in the distance with the other trees. This is the same vista virtually in the summertime when everything's a lush and verdant green and the skies are a little bluer and there's no frost on the ground. And this is, as I recall, I took this last year as spring was trying to take over, and the grass was starting to become greener again, but it was still winter, so it was sort of that cusp of winter going into spring that we're sort of in now. But the same view three ways gives you three different inspirations, whether it's the fog and the mist that inspire us here, or the sky and the color of the summer, or again, the different colors that we see in the fall. So that just in a microcosm explains how we look outside to see our way inside, for me. Some of the books that we were speaking of earlier that Kate mentioned, this was the last one I did with Brian and Eric, our newer book, Barry Dixon Inspirations, a lot of the different things that inspire us, many, of course, being garden-inspired. Our first book that we did with them that went into its second printing, Barry Dixon Interior, still with my same publisher, Skip Smith. Some magazine covers. This is a veranda cover we had were Senator and Mrs. Frist's home in Nashville, Tennessee, where we, in this little octagonal room, we got our color for the glazed walls from the underside of the boxwood leaves in a beautiful little boxwood maze and garden designed by Ben Page in the gardens outside those French doors. This was the house that Senator Frist had grown up in that we reimagined and added on to. House Beautiful cover story that we had for a home on Capitol Hill, a young family, a lovely young family at the time. I think they had, when we started this project, she had one she was with child, and they had one already. They now have 4, and we've done a new house for them. And I found out this week that House Beautiful has picked the new home that I did for them over off Foxhall up, and they're shooting it during cherry blossom time this year again. Again, the cherry blossoms here on Capitol Hill, you can see, might have had some indication of color that we were going to use inside this home on North Capitol. This was the fall cover of Lux magazine, and again, what were we inspired by as we did this 56th floor penthouse? But the ocean. We're right on the beach. We're right on the water there in South Beach, and I think this is another incredibly evocative view to bring inside, or at least to abstract and play with the concept of water and sky, and we're going to explore that a little bit more with some of the pictorials that I'll show you in the body of the text. Back to Elway, my own home. I'm going to show you a few images that ran in some of these. We were talking about the Farewell Book of Color. I think this was from that book. We were the chapter 1 in that one. Actually, that's how I met Brian, my collaborator on my subsequent books, as well as the Fortuny book and the new Portho book that you may know that just came out with Joan Carl, who hired the same duo, the dynamic duo of Eric Kowalczyk and Brian Coleman, to do the new book on Portho linens. They're starting a new book now on Zubair wall covering. That's they say it's going to be their last, but they said that with my first book, so I don't trust that that's going to be the truth, and I hope it's not. Anyway, my living room here, I've used this divider concept of sheer linen to sort of create a translucent divider that sort of lures you, almost like a negligee. It lures you to another place in a way that lets you see sort of what's coming but not see it all. And I love the thought of that. I was inspired by fog that I see through the window. Fog does that, and as it starts to clear and burns off, then the full picture comes. And it's a beautiful way to look at your garden, to see it first through the veil of fog, and as that lifts, to see it clearly. So again, color, of course, the flowers that we pick in our own gardens, the stairwell as it heads upstairs to Elway. Again, I've used a lot of sheer unlined linen at windows because of those foggy Virginia morning views that I have that I love so much, because it's almost like the fog is wafted through the window and has become part of the room at that time of day. Sometimes you see it at night too, as the sun's falling. In my dining room here, Fortuny drapery, the Campanelli pattern. I work for the Fortuny brand. I did their new showrooms in New York and Venice, and designed products for the brand. And this Campanelli in that color, avocado green on silvery gold, was the same one my grandmother in Memphis had, Memphis, Tennessee, when I was a kid. So I wanted to repeat that for myself when I did my own grown-up dining room when I grew up. In my library here, which is sort of a curiosity shop of anything I've found, or some things I can't find anymore because they're under other things in there, but anything I've found in travels all over the world. I love books. I was speaking with a couple of the ladies earlier who asked me what I might collect. Probably books are among the things that I collect the most heartily. But I collect ideas. I collect objects. This is one of our tables for Averett, the metal piece that's a metal mesh inspired by a more classical table that would have, I call those things the evolution of design. What's casting the shadow is new, and that's translucent too. It's made out of metal mesh. The top, the base, everything, the center table here, it also could be used outdoors. What's great is what's casting the shadow is something new, even though the shadow seems to be familiar. Another part of my, in the old plans, this was called the reading room, another part of our library, which has windows in this octagon that face due east and due west. So all during the day there would have been natural light to read by, I guess, in the reading room, adjunct to the library itself. My kitchen, which was one of the few rooms I really had to redo, they just put in a brand new black and white, stark, reflective marble and granite kitchen, and it just didn't seem right in the old house. So I took that out, repurposed all the appliances in a catering kitchen I was doing downstairs in a stone kitchen in the scullery below, and then created with Premier Cabinetry a cabinet line that I liked, and brought the Beaumonier stone in and made the room feel a little bit more fin de siècle, which I think is more in keeping with the rest of the house. These old Morris patterns that I used on the walls are from, I think, the 1860s, 1870s, the documentaries that I had hand block printed and these original colors. So these are the only ones made. That's his apple pattern, the only ones ever printed. William Morris, too, was so influenced by his gardens at Kelmscott Manor and at Red House in England. Everything he designed, every fabric, every paper, every block print that he did came from nature and from drawings and studies he would do sitting in his garden in England. So I feel a little bit akin to him. Some more of our mesh pieces. This is the upper hall at Elway with our paint colors for C2 that we've used in this. Again, you see a mix of old and new because it's sort of how we live. We don't want to really live necessarily, I think, in museum quality rooms that are wonderful in a museum, but at home maybe they feel a little bit off-putting, like people can't touch things. And we're very touchy-feely in our house with all of our things. And a lady came up that had been through our house a couple of times for the garden club, with the Virginia Garden Club, where we set records, I think, each year that we were, the last 2 years at one, we've been on 3 times. And we didn't cordon anything off. I can't remember how many thousand people came through. Nothing was hurt. And everyone respected everything and could touch it if they wish. We like things to be accessible. This wall covering you may recognize if you've been to our vignette. These are painted murals I had hand painted by Warnock Studios in the style of one of my favorite painters, Claude Lorraine, who was a French painter painting classical landscapes in Italy in the 1700s. And my thought was, if he could come through time, and he was here in the 21st century, but still painting in that style, and can see all of my views from my window there in Virginia, and painted them on the walls, what would he paint? So we did that. It's as if these walls fell away, those actual trees and things are through that wall. So again, I can see through the wall and the garden's brought inside, even at night. We actually photographed a 360 on the roof above my bedroom. And then we actually, with basically a projector, projected the skeletons of all of the trees, the stone walls, the meadows, the mountains beyond, and then we painted in the style of Claude Lorraine to flesh those out. So there's another view of my bedroom. Again, I've used Conrad shade material for sort of a floating room divider. Again, that sort of translucent, barely there phantom wall that I love so much, so that it's like fog inside the house. And since I really don't have any, I have shades that pull down for privacy or from sun. I don't really have any neighbors that I'm private from, because we are just shy of, except some four-legged ones, and I don't care about them. But we can wake up with the sun, which I like to do every morning here if I don't draw the shades. And I love, again, this feeling of framed shears, framed shear panels framed out with this old world weaver's cut velvet that's almost the same sort of, if you will, scale as the frame on the Barbizon School frame that I have around the scrim that forms the headboard of the bed. Our bathrooms that we did add in, we usurped the territory of an 11th bedroom on that main level that we just didn't need for some reason, given that we had no children. We do have a lot of guests, but we took that territory and carved out a much grander master suite, and it became sort of a hall of mirrors, getting our cue from the architecture of the McKimmon white windows and things that were that were nature to the house, and putting that on the armoires and telescoping light around through mirrors. One of the guest bedrooms, again looking out to a verdant garden view, which inspired a lot of the color that you might see here. I had that Perigord pattern from Scalamandre hand painted on a Scalamandre silk that forms the draping of the bed. And again, we've lived in this house 18 years. It's hard for me to believe, and we've changed nothing. We've added a couple of, we've dolled up, if you will, a couple of the other bedrooms. Usually, as I have another product line or launch or fabrics that come out, we use it for the ads or whatever, and we'll say, well, that'll be an excuse to do another bedroom. Other than that, I've changed very little. What inspires me daily for texture, for color, for pattern, for the things that I'm doing as patterns for wall coverings or drapery, for lights, for abstract contemporary collections that we do, is the garden, the things I see every day. These are raspberries in our vegetable garden. These pumpkins, which were growing more orange every day that I would walk by or go over and see them every morning in the garden. We have those sort of growing up on a side of the garden that terraces down so they'll get good drainage. You can tell this is a brood hen. She's sitting on her eggs, and no one's going to deter her from her mission. But one of the colors in my paint line is called coxcomb, and then there's another orange color that I ended up naming bittersweet because hen's iris didn't seem like a good paint color name. But bittersweet worked. But I actually got the color from that ring on her eye from this photograph. I would take photographs, and then I would blow them up, and I would mix my paint colors and until on the color copy of the Pantone, I couldn't see my paint on top of the color I was trying to get. And that's how I came up with the 87 colors in our paint line. So the hen's eggs here, all the Aracanas, the Cochins, the Americanas, we've got Rhode Island Reds and Buffalo Orpingtons. So all of their eggs are different shell color. The Morans, I love those darker brown, almost chocolate colored eggs. Each one of those eggshells became a color in our paint line. So these dahlias, these flowers, my late partner Michael took this picture with this bee going in there, and I said, if I was a bee, that's where I want to live too, right in the middle of that flower. I'd crawl through there and take a nap inside that little vortex of this dahlia. And all of those things and colors became our paint line for C2 Paint, divided into colors that we considered more earth, elemental, earth, air, fire, water, which is how we've done all of our collections, because we think everything has a natural world connotation to it. That then ran as our first ad for the paint collection in El Decor and Veranda. I beg your pardon?
Is that yours?
That's Ellie, our wire-haired fox terrier, who was about 14 then. She stayed with us 2 more years, and now we've got Dinah, who's 3, who looks just like her. But they're all different. They're all your babies. But we have another wire-haired fox terrier now too, that actually was just in another ad for another campaign for another product. So this is in that same guest bedroom with some of our also tables that we designed for our terriers, mixed with a Syrian chest that we found in the Middle East, and a lot of different things that we just bring home to roost, since we've got a chicken theme going through this. Sometimes I took 3 pictures just to show you, so you see how clear the image of the inspiration is to what we end up making. The roll bales of hay on our farm, it's a working farm with cattle and sheep and goats and chickens and a couple of llamas and all kinds of things. Some critters we didn't invite that live on the farm as well. But that became one of our best sellers in the stitchery pattern of linen on natural cotton that we called crop art circles, as a play on op art circles, as a play on crop art circles, but it came from the hay bales. The wall covering version that we've done on a much larger scale, we're now calling hay bales because we needed a different name for that. So you can see when I say I look outside to find my way inside, I'm literally doing that. I call this batik print that we do in magenta and orange here, chariot wheels. But when we added onto the farm and bought another section of land that used to belong to St. Leonard's farm next door to us, there was a stone wall that we didn't know existed, and we were excavating under mounds of green that had not been disturbed for a generation or 2. There were neighbors that had lived for 40 years in the house next door to me, and they said, we never knew there was a stone wall under there. So I know it hadn't been seen for 40 years. This old Sears and Roebuck 1907 hay baler we found underneath there. It was like the Tin Woodman hiding underneath. And we oiled it and brought it over to the barn, but the spokes on that then became inspiration for this pattern that I did. The newborn, these are Angora goats, and the newborns, when they're first born, it's almost like the lamb, the Persian lamb texture that is on them, on the newborn's coats before they start to grow out and become a little bit more Rapunzel-ish like these goats are just before fleecing. So what we're doing is, this is a silk velvet that I did for my first collection with Vervain. That was the most expensive fabric we put in the line, the most expensive fabric Vervain had ever had. The owner said, Barry, I'm going to put this in for you, but I know it's not going to sell. I just have to tell you, because I've been doing this for a long time. It was the #1 seller in the collection. It made them do a lot more expensive fabrics, and it's still in the top 10% of sales 7 years later. So sometimes it's one of those things, you build it and they'll come. And it encouraged them. Charlotte Moss does a collection with Fabricut, part of the same company. Robert Crow in California does one, Isaac Mizrahi does one, and I do one. And it encouraged all of those collections to go a little bit north on what they were offering, especially the Fabricut line, which is a little bit less expensive, and they're really selling beautifully. So this was the first ad that ran, that we shot at Elway then with my first batch of fabrics, and we now have over 500 pattern fabrics and wall coverings with this company. A drop of water on, we were actually, I didn't take a picture of it, but I was sitting out by the pond at the barn in the back of an orange 1957 Chevrolet Nomad, as we like to do, and having a sundowner cocktail, and we saw this first drop of water as it started to rain on the placid pond, and I loved the concentric circles of that. I didn't get a picture of that, but I found this one to show you what inspired then a door that I was doing for a house. I was doing all carved custom teak doors and hardware from my friend Scott Baxter here, and I thought that would be the epicenter there, then the drop of water around my doorknobs on all the doors in the house. That then led, maybe 8 years later, when I was asked to do a collection for arterials, I went back to Epicenter, and I did this as hammered brass in a bronze finish over carved wood as our 4-panel arterials Epicenter screen, which is still one of the best sellers we've had in that brand now, 5 years later. And I designed it so that if it was flat, the height would be, the width of it, if it's standing vertically, would be the width of a queen bed, and the height of it horizontally is a king bed, and it can be mounted on the wall as a headboard. Different things that you think of, but all coming from that drop of water on the land. And then that ran as our first catalog cover and ad for the first collection that we did there, along with an old recamier that belonged to my great-grandmother, and a woolen throw made from our cashmere, from our goats of our Angora wool, hand loomed by Michael's mother, Ruth, with love there on this. So again, it's all these things that come from my past and my farm, and in a very present, modern day way, become part of a not a traditional collection, but a more avant-garde, abstracted collection that we're doing for companies. We pulled this is actually, was over by the barn, this hive of bees, and the couple, Susan and Delbert, that worked for us, Delbert, we had to wait until the winter to collect it, and then you go through a process. This had been abandoned, but we went through a process of making sure there was nothing inside before I sent it to Texas, where we were going to work on a collection. And I thought this could become an inspiration for a light fixture. So these were some of my original drawings and what I was thinking, how I wanted it to be enriched metal. I thought if the hornets can crawl in, then light could come out, and that the light that's coming out would basically inform and illuminate the surface of this. It didn't shed enough light, so we kept the top part of it, and it evolved into something that then had a smoke glass globe underneath, but the top of the hornet's nest that the light did come through. So again, you build it, it doesn't work, you find a way to make it into something. Freelon is just, of course, a word, the French word for hornet. Our Freelon pendant became, though, a bestseller in our new collection with arterials, shot in a very fanciful way here for our ad campaign that ran again in Elle Decor and Architectural Digest for that. So you see this genesis of looking outside to look inside and where an idea could come. The Architectural Digest right now, if you go online, has a story. Virginia designer creates chandelier from the locust thorns. This is a picture I took with my handy dandy iPhone. I never took pictures before I had the iPhone because I just couldn't. I was terrible. The iPhone is I can design 3 times more quickly because I have an iPhone. I took that picture of the locust thorns growing on one of the locust trees, and that evolved into this piece, and we're up for an award for Light Fixture of the Year through Interior Design Magazine from that, and you can see exactly what it was. But I sent the picture first, and in Texas they said, no, you have to go back and find it and cut the thorns. I had to find the exact thorns, cut them. And we found a way to not only do this, but we did thorn holders for spheres that are part of our arterials accessory collection for that. We do this in bronze. We do triptychs of these. We do multiple sizes. So it became a whole series of things that were inspired by the thorns on a tree. So a thorny idea became one that was sort of profitable at the end of the day, we hope. So the company's doing really well with that one this season, brand new. These are some of the trials, we call them, when I was doing the first wall covering collection. Some of these based on photographs I'd taken out in the garden with certain butterflies. We have a lot of monarch butterflies certain times of the year, and so I called that the Monarch series. You see the hay bales forming into this wall covering where I'd exaggerated the scale, and I'd done them on recycled string and recycled paper. Over here, my cacao vine from another, and these are different trials of colors. We try 60, 70 colors until we edit down to the 6 or 7 that are going to go into, we think, finally, the market where we think those will be the best sellers. So there is a home in Richmond with my wall covering now on the wall, with one of our chairs, with another one of our fabrics. I think that's the hay bales, the crop art circle fabric in the grisaille color against my grisaille color wall covering there. So again, how something growing on the fence becomes a wall covering that grows inside on the walls. So again, this light, this ran as one of our, for our second collection with arterials. This was inspired by cockleburrs that would get on my socks when I was in the field. And I thought that thing that keeps pricking me and bothering me, okay, you've caused me so much trouble, what can I do with you? And I just sort of thought, well, if I carve it out and put a mirror inside and let that reflect, and I did this in cast French plaster. We did it in the white finish, Blanc de Chine, French plaster finish, and in this dark gold finish. And it's, again, was one of our best sellers for that brand. This is shot on the loggia there at Elway Hall again. Shears that we do with our line as an indoor-outdoor, as well as our Atlas bench that we do for arterials and one of our tables for them. And this is one of this lattice piece that you see is actually a product that I originally did for the Fortuny showrooms with antique ones, but then I decided they were worth reproducing. But they were architectural salvage that I bought that were from an old bell tower of a church in Belzoni, Mississippi. So again, looking outside, in this case, outside to architecture, things that are being torn down and salvaged to make something new that we could use in a fresh way inside. I'm going to show you through here a few private homes we've done, and I'm starting to, can you guess, if you just see this, where we might be? Where in the world might we be? Does this conjure up any concept of, I beg your pardon?
The beach.
I'm at the beach. Yeah, I've got a fishtail skirting here. There's almost like a whale's carcass. We had seen a whale's carcass up north. I had seen one the summer before, and I thought if I designed a staircase that was based on something like that. So this is actually in Rehoboth, Delaware, but it's a house that we did for wonderful clients that we've done multiple homes for. We designed the staircase here, and it does have a certain ocean feel, so you know what outside we were thinking of when we put this inside. Well, you can tell we're in the tropics here. A client that I met maybe at this talk, it was either at this talk or at a talk I did at the Chevy Chase Country Club, but this lady came up after. I just bought a house in St. Bart's. If anyone wants to come up to me after and you're doing a home in St. Bart's or anywhere else, believe me, I'm ready to go. I love it when my clients are local and I don't have to fly to them, so if it's here or wherever, but at least we can meet here and then do it in St. Bart's like we did here. So we started meeting in a place like this, but then the only colors we used on the interior of this house anywhere were the colors we saw through the window. So the Caribbean blues and greens and the verdant greens that were on the island side of the house became one with our interiors. And that ran as a cover story for Coastal Living magazine. Here we are inside again, where I painted everything white, but I again did these African batik prints in the blue and the indigos. We used a lot of those sand colors inside too, because we're right on this was the highest point in St. Jean looking down over Eden Rock, the very highest home there. And all that wood and all those ceilings were mahogany for tropical wood, but they were also, all the lacquer had darkened and they were black. So the first thing I had to go in is paint everything white so I could see if there was anything crawling. And it makes you just feel better if you know they're there, and you can see them if it's white. So we did that, and there was never anything there, but we didn't worry about them being there after that all happened. But the house turned out to be really a glorious project. This is another home up near the water, the other coast. This is in Montecito, California. This house was damaged recently in the Montecito rains, but salvageable. So the stone floors and everything were there, but I can tell you all this upholstery is being redone. This a house we built from the ground up with wonderful architects, inspired by what we saw outside there too. A lot of architecture by Wallace Neff, like we see a lot of regional architecture in different areas. So there's a certain sort of Mediterranean, California feel and vibe coming into our architecture and into our interiors. You see this beautiful sun coming through here on these reclaimed stone floors that were 400-year-old stone floors that were brought over from the Middle East and put into the project. We've mixed contemporary with traditional things because there's a lot of both going on out in California. The sunlight, again, these doors open up onto a terrace and you have a clear view of the Channel Islands with nothing between you and the water. Up on a hill, there's a Jesuit mission on the other side and Oprah Winfrey on the right. So no one's going to bother you. You know, Oprah's chickens cackle and you can hear them from the guest house, and that's about it. But a beautiful, beautiful place. A beautiful, inspiring exterior to inspire your interior. This was a bedroom in that house, and you have all that fog and spume that you wake up with in California. I had been speaking maybe a year before I did this house in Laguna Niguel, and they put me at the Ritz-Carlton there in Laguna Niguel up above where you can see all the people surfing downstairs and everything. The next morning when I woke up, there was complete opaque smoke against all my windows on both sides, because you had I had windows that opened out to the sea on one side and to a hallway that had more glass on the other, and you could see nothing but the smoke. I ran out, started hitting doors going down the hall. This fire, screaming fire, and about the third door down, a sleepy guy comes out and says, "You idiot, that's fog." So I knew how smoky. I felt I slunk back to my room. And never have made that mistake again. I'm afraid if there ever is actually a fire, I'm going to think it's fog and we're all going to die. But that fog, I never forgot how intense it was. And I thought, well, you know, when you wake up with that outside those windows, we were right here, and it was very foggy every morning here in Montecito too. It wasn't clear. That burns off later in the morning. So I thought it would be fun to do a sort of Jean Harlow silky room here, since Jean Harlow had lived in this area back in the 30s for that Hollywood glamour thing too. Not only looking outside, but also looking to the past and future as we think. This is in the mountains in Virginia, near Warm Springs, near the Homestead. And this is on the golf course there, with this house that we did. All new construction with a lot of old imprint. But you can see on a clear day, 7 miles through a gap in the mountains there, in the Shenandoah Mountains, looking through this, which we love. And there are 3-story columns you can start to see on that terrace that's on a 70 or 80 foot limestone bluff. So it's basically just like it's almost like Olympus. You're up there on top of this with these Greek columns looking at nature. It's just wonderful. And that we were inspired also by Thomas Jefferson, who had designed the domed covers for the Warm Springs baths and things there in Bath County, Virginia. So we did the triple hung windows like he'd done at Monticello, but this side looked you saw a view over here, but all of this was the woods. So we took all those verdant greens and mixed in some golds and things too, so that when all the leaves turn golden in the fall, we'd have that. But it still was tethered to its view. This bedroom was on not on the view side, but on the mountain side, and there were all these saplings that grew all around on that side that didn't get a lot of sun. So I commissioned murals to be painted on the walls here that were basically the saplings, again, if the walls weren't there, what I would see if I saw that through the walls, abstracted into this concept. And then this John Robeshaw shear was like pitching a very glamorous tent in the woods, hung on that Nierman Weeks skeletal metal bed. So, and it's sheer too. I didn't use there is an opaque drapery that can pull automated with something like this, but instead of changing the screen, I'd be lowering my shades, my Conrad shades in there for blackout. Again, this ran as a cover for Southern Accents magazine, and there were these beautiful birch trees outside the windows here, and so I commissioned the same artist, Tom Warnock, to do a birch bark finish on the walls of this music room. And there was a sort of a lyrical aside. These Rose Tarlow chairs seemed to be dancing on point, almost like treble clef notes. And I like to play with the concept of what a room is, and take a note, pun intended, from the use of the room, and as we do the view and looking out and in. The piece that we've rewired there as a chandelier in this very formal room with Fortuny and a beautiful Sacco Hessline silk and cashmere woven drapery at the window, was just a rusty old barn weight for a hay baler in a formal French barn. And we bought it and wired it for lighting and hung it inside this. And that seemed to have a nice play with our treble clefs down below. The dining room here, there were these fox grapes that were growing on old fence rows on this property. This is in Centerville, Virginia, and is actually for sale right now because these clients have moved farther south after several years. We did this about, I'd say, 12, 13 years ago. And as it ran in Southern accents. So, but we did these murals, and I overlaid a William Morris sort of lace tracery pattern on it. And I was at the house recently, not a thing has changed. It's like time has stopped in this house. Not a thing is frayed or worn inside. It's so beautiful, and all these Fortuny draperies falling so quietly against that sort of woodland scene that is at one with its view, I think is really magical. It's very fairy tale. You kind of expect little elves to creep out from under the drapery. The master bedroom there looked back over a hydrangea rimmed pool. So I took this hydrangea pattern from Robert Keim, and we did all the walls and the bed drapings. I can't remember how many yards we used. There were 5 rooms in the suite, and we covered every surface with this paperback linen from Robert Keim in London through John Rosselli, and it turned out so beautifully. It was such a wonderful kismet with the garden. We're in Palm Beach here. I was inspired by Nautilus Shell when I designed this staircase for this house, which was all new construction for our wonderful friends Pat and Roseanne. We've done multiple homes for them. This is I did a little water feature that's just a still gurgling water feature, and I put one of our phantom mesh pieces here with a piece of reclaimed garden statuary. Again, I love to bring things from the garden inside. We're going to get to more of that as we look through these things as well. The old plaques that you see, the Italian ones came from a Roman villa. They were originally used on the exterior of a home in a garden, and we've used them on these Venetian plaster walls in our stairwell in Palm Beach, in Manalapan actually. Here you're looking out toward the water, and you're seeing all these sort of seaweed green colors and sargasso colors, these Caribbean and cerulean blues and things. It's wonderful. I use sea glass. I created my own terrazzo with sea glass and different colors of stone and sand, and I had a little fleck of sort of a cassis colored a red stone in there too, and we created all the floors that are very glassy, almost like the surface again of water. If you could see through that window, you see a pair of statues there, and then the outside coming in there. That is the water of the pool, and there is a stone chair in the pool that as the water starts to go down, you sit in the stone chair and your feet are in the water, and then it trails into the deeper territory. So it's like the water continues from the floor to the pool to the actual salt water that you have behind in that triptych. Just again, a little close-up of what inspires us when we're looking outside, and sometimes not only outside but underwater for inspiration. That's still outside, I guess. It's not inside. And again, old Roman glass mixed with these old French pots that I found. We did a buying trip with these clients to France and found a lot of these old things that we brought back to Florida with us. An old Cambodian drum that I found from Gordine Antiques in Georgetown at the time, and used as a center table in the upstairs mezzanine with that beautiful little Murano chandelier that we found that was exactly the green color of the green palm trees outside the window if that Conrad shade was lifted. And again, more Fortuny falling like waterfalls left and right of our vista. In the bedroom here, it looks a little dark in that picture, but it's a little lighter, maybe a late afternoon shot. Beautiful turquoise and cerise colors, dark sort of carnelian playing. In this room that we did, this is in Virginia. This was originally the home that Jessica Lang and Sam Shepard lived in for so many years in Albemarle County, Virginia, towards Scottsville, on the other side of Charlottesville. And there was a beautiful grove of incredible old growth magnolias, and that's what inspired this. We took the waxy cuticle, the top of the leaf of the magnolia, and did 7 layers of English glaze in that magnolia color on the walls of this old 1789 library that had different species of woods on different sides because there had been a fire. So we lacquered it to unify it. And then the underside of the magnolia leaf we matched to a suede from Edelman that we put on the ottoman, that sort of velvety underside. So the magnolia leaf was our inspiration. The dining room here, which we deformalized by taking out a big crystal chandelier, created an area for tea on this side, and then this looked out over beautiful fields that they, I think that was like a 2,200 acre farm, Totier Creek Farm, and they raised a lot of hay out there for their horses and for their cattle, the hay field. So I used a Dongia raffia on the walls in here as sort of a connotation or an abstraction of the concept of hay and straw, and it also quietened the room and decelerated the formality because they didn't want it to be quite so formal as it had been. The master bedroom here looks out over the same view. You've got that same curved wall that's right above the dining room wall we just saw. Old Virginia quilts and an absence of color. Pastoral scenes with cattle and horses in them, and this printed toile that we used on all the walls. So again, getting a cue from the natural world around us as we were designing the interior. Here, this is a home that ran as a cover story for Veranda magazine as well. Antique garden urns that came from England that we brought over. They still had the moss growing on them. Our client wanted the moss watered so it wouldn't die. And we brought it inside and used it here. I think they still water the moss, if it's still there. If not, it's petrified and it's still sort of that greeny, goldy brown, licheny color that I kind of like to eat myself. The pieces here, I found one Swedish, beautiful Swedish bench, and I had the other one carved and made because I wanted a pair. And you can't tell unless you look underneath which was the original and which one is the reproduction. Again, this home inspired again by this beautiful Robert Keim printed linen. This is his Tree of Life design, and we have beautiful, beautiful gardens. This is just off Bradley Boulevard. And actually, I think Sotheby's has this house for sale right now too, because my clients are empty nesters. The girls have all gone off. I've done their apartments in New York, and the house seems big. These clients want to move a little closer in and downsize, so they may be selling it furnished for all I know. So if you like this, I think it might be available. This is a pair of chairs and a pair of settees. They're on each side of a fireplace in the dining room in this little tea niche, we call it. This rose tarlo table, I thought, had a beautiful quality, sculpturally, is a three-dimensional quality of the Tree of Life design that you see on the printed linen behind. I had later a chance to be in Prince Charles's home in the Cotswolds many years later with Diane Sawyer, who we were on a buying trip with, and she had asked us to go with her actually on the grounds of Highgrove, where he had proposed earlier to Princess Diana, then Lady Diana, I guess. And this same pattern was hanging in his library. We had a long conversation about that pattern and why he liked it. He thought it reminded him of old Arthur Rackham illustrations in his children's books. Robert Keim is his decorator. He made this pattern, I found out, for that house, and I had inadvertently used it for this house, not knowing that it was made for Prince Charles. So this is the library in that same home, which is sort of a gentleman's conservatory in a way it looks back out to the garden, and then there are stairs that go to a long, beautiful library of wines down below. It's kind of nice that you can close one pair of doors and you can spend 3 days with nothing but wine and books if you wish. There's a nice bathroom off to the side, hidden behind a leather wall, and it's all you need sometimes, especially if you're in a terrible 3-day argument with someone else in the house. So again, but looking for the connotation of things, oak leaves being the tree of knowledge, and there were beautiful oaks in the garden. I did in my plaster rings when we did design the ceilings. I did oak leaves in the plaster. They were still soft when we placed them individually up in the rings around these domes. So again, looking always, as we always have, to the outdoors for inspiration. The morning room of that house gets really bright east sun, so we did all sunny colors in there. Sunflowers. When they shot it for Veranda, they shot that in the early morning. Master sitting room, again, a play of cooler colors and sort of a little bit of fog and mist in there. I love to fall asleep in rooms this color. I don't like to wake up or fall asleep in, say, a red room. It's kind of hard to, it's easy to wake up in them, it's hard to go to sleep in them, if there's any light. But I love these sort of soft colors for that. This is in Chicago. It's a penthouse right on Michigan Avenue. And we can see from this penthouse, these are clients that I did a beautiful home for in McLean originally. Then I did this home for them in Chicago as well. They were living between the two places. So we get a lot of sunlight up there. And you're also looking at the lake on one side. So I used a lot of sunny, bright colors that were part of all that. So you're up there with the sun on the 50th floor. You may as well celebrate sunlight and sunny colors. And we could see the botanical gardens, the Chicago Botanical Gardens from this side. And I used these old Zubair patterns, we were talking about Zubair earlier, on the walls there, and these reminded me of the botanical gardens that we had in our vista, looking down upon them from this high-rise, which I thought was really wonderful too. Even the chairs, those are our Oatlands chairs that I designed for my Tomlinson line, almost created sort of a fence row that I was looking through to the garden, I thought, in circle around the table, almost like an iron fencing quality. Looking outside for inspiration, even in the city, in the master bedroom, I saw this huge building with all of those windows of rectangles looking back at me. So what I did in the bedroom proper were windows of rectangles, but with pastoral views that we didn't have in downtown Chicago, but that they missed. These are the Claude Lorraine's, again, my favorite artist, some of his pieces that inspired the murals in my room that then inspired the wall covering that I did, that we now have on the screen in our vignette here for our tabletop display here at Hillwood. So that's how weird things come full circle. This is in New York again, and I was looking at glass buildings with reflective, this is to the corner of 3rd and White, Church Street in Soho in Manhattan. And my client was of Irish descent. I found this beautiful carved Irish piece, again with the oak leaves. He's very smart, so he needed Tree of Knowledge leaves. He was Diane's producer at ABC, a news executive for ABC still to this day in New York. And this was sort of a play of both. I got the grid of the modern. I did art glass inserts. It's become part of our line that we do with Averett, these mirrored screens. What seems more like New York and outside than pigeons roost, on your windowsill. So it puts it in its place. New York is old and it has history, but it has modernity, and there are pigeons everywhere. So here we are in New York, and we know where we are. We know what's outside the window because we're looking at this inside our home. A home we did in Nashville again for the Frisk. This is a 2-story living room we added onto the old house. Doing all the interior architecture with a wonderful architect, Daniel Lee, who has offices here in Old Town Alexandria. Zubair patterns and panels that I put over the overmantels in this 2-story room, over the staircase, also reminded me of things there in Nashville, the Parthenon, a lot of Greek structures and temple-like structures that are in the gardens there. And they had, this is 28 acres downtown. Right by Vanderbilt, that they have all walled off. So they have rolling gardens, and they can literally golf in their yard. So I was celebrating all that too through all these views and all the glass that we used on the back of the house. I spoke for the garden club in this garden last spring for 500 women, all set out on that large club. For Karen Frisk called me and asked me to speak with them, and that was the whole thing. Was strictly Ben Page came too, who had done the gardens that we spoke of earlier. This is the family room there. Again, I think it was 34 feet to the top of the ceiling there. Old African raffia that I salvaged and used in the upper realms of that, mixed with all the oak and pine that we did as a mixture. I can stand and walk into that fireplace to give you an idea of scale. And often what we're playing with, those are Dongia lamps that are just under 7 feet high, that are standing on each side of that. So again, scale and the scale of the outdoors is sometimes what we're playing with. That living room that I showed you earlier was also 36 feet high. So sometimes we have scale stories that get inspired, that we have to be inspired by trees and things of scale in the garden themselves, as well as the exterior architecture. Another little cozier corner with some of our furniture we do, my Michael bench for Tomlinson mixed with a Rose Tarlow chair, and a beautiful 18th century tea table that the client owned already. Sometimes your clients actually have great things that they want you to reuse, which is our favorite thing to do. So it certainly puts their history there. I think I put this in, even in a dark corner where I don't have a window to see outside, I'll often put a landscape or something, almost like little windows in that dark corner, so that I still am looking outside, even at night, just at somewhere else outside. This is their master bedroom with a little sitting area for morning coffee that opens to a beautiful little walled garden with a goldfish pond and frogs. And this is Karen's favorite place. And I draped the bed, again, with horsehair here to keep that foggy ceiling over the bed without actually encumbering or feeling like I was doing the traditional draping on a four-poster here. In her bath, we found this 18th century carved tub. I felt like I was, I was almost sacrilegious. I had to drill the first hole. I guess when it used to be filled with hot water, they did it with buckets and servants. And I had to drill a hole to put the waterworks fixtures in there and felt guilty about it. But it's still better than Karen having to sit there while people poured buckets of hot water over her shoulder. So, and then they had found this screen on a trip, this Ming Dynasty screen on a trip to China, and we floated it there with this Catherine Ireland printed linen and a John Rosselli lantern. And there were trees in that printed linen that you can't really see there. It's hard to see, but that were evocative of the trees that are in the garden around this bathroom. This is their pool house, and we brought all these woodsy tones and all these bright green colors that we had from the lawn and all of that. The doors to the left open right out to the pool, and this is all indoor-outdoor fabric and furniture, so you can sit here wet and fall asleep after a good swim. This is local. This is a house that we did that's in McLean that was in the Fortuny book. We used a lot of Fortuny in this house for lovely, lovely clients that we've done a couple of homes for now. I've just finished a new home for them up at the Greenbrier. They love this sort of light Prussian sky blue display. So we use yards and yards of this vervain silk and lots of Fortuny. And then I had the Rose Tarlow Highboy commissioned in custom colors with our C2 paint colors, as a matter of fact, and did all this beautiful plasterwork again with our guide Jeff Shart, who's a local plaster maker extraordinaire, an artist really. This Waterford chandelier floats like water bubbles, I think. Which there are a lot of water features in the garden beyond this. You're looking into the bed with all that Fortuny on the coverlet and the pillows, which I think is so beautiful. And then a mirrored tabletop that I designed. There's like a pool of water. Again, that you'd see in the garden. For us, we feel that mirrored surfaces, especially in the round, have that quality. This is in Atlanta, a living room I did that ran in an Atlanta magazine down there for a couple that was from Asia that wanted really a lot of different things brought into play in this house. I found this beautiful Jansen chandelier in France that was 18th century Murano, and then it had been rewired by Maison Jansen in the 1940s, where they'd added the quartz obelisk and things on that you see as sort of the stalagmites that are on top of the Murano. And then I took a piece of jute rope and gilded it and put the wire through, and we can raise and lower it to any height we want in the room this way. Tie it off, if you will. Of course, if you don't think you're nervous lifting, an 18th century Murano, you do it very carefully, and you tie it off very carefully. You make sure the knot is knotted. Fortuny draperies in here as well, and our furniture for Tomlinson with a lot of antiques and things that we mixed here. And again, a lot of our fabrics that we've intermixed with the Fortuny, part of a bespoke collection of pillows that I did with Fortuny too, and you see some of them here with trapunto and quilting and things like that to really bring the Fortuny patterns to the third dimension. We sell those, we've done collections for them for Bergdorf's and Neiman's, and we sell those through the showrooms worldwide, the ones in Venice, the one in New York, and they just called me last week. It looks like we might be doing a new showroom, so I'm very excited to do a new one for Fortuny as well. The bathroom of the house that I had shown you earlier, I got a little bit out of sequence here, that one with the blue bedroom, this is the bath that adjoins that, and again, it's a mix of these. What I loved here is the floor is all from New Ravenna through Waterworks, but the floor is cut leaves, like a pattern play of leaves that we designed like they've fallen on the forest floor, but we used the leaf shapes, the positive and negative of that I laid out when I was designing a carpet originally for another license we have with the Megarian Carpets. And then we had this made as a custom leaf carpet floor done in 4 colors of soapstone and quartz, actually quartz and soapstone. This is in North Carolina, and had they their druthers, these clients would have, you can guess, probably, they would have lived in one of Timothy Corrigan's chateaus in the south of France someplace. As a matter of fact, all the walls came from the south of France, from a chateau that had caught on fire, and about a third of it was left, and they just tore it down and salvaged what they could. And that included all this boiserie that we put together in an airplane hangar in Charlotte to configure to the new rooms that we were going to put it into. This was all new construction. And it became this dining room with all of it. To give you an idea of height again, standing there, I can only reach the first shelf inside the glass, and I'm 6'4". You have to be on ladders that pull out, that are hidden in the panels here, that pull out to access the next 4 shelves of Chinese import porcelain that are hiding in the glass above that. The kitchen here is almost like, I was inspired really by not only outdoor, you can see the back wall is almost like outdoor garden flooring, but even the illustrations of Maxfield Parrish and Mother Goose and things like that. As I was designing we've got I think it was an 8-burner Le Cornu that we had custom made in brass and copper for this client. And then we had that actually made locally. Mike Smith is in Davidsonville, Maryland, between here and Baltimore. And he makes all these hoods for us wherever we're installing them all over the world. But this was in their wonderful kitchen there in North Carolina. This is their bedroom, and doors open up and these French doors to the left and right of this fireplace. And you can walk outside to terraces, and there are stairs that go down into the lake. It's sort of on an island in a lake in North Carolina, and very near Davidson College. And so I wanted watery, misty, sort of pond-like colors in the room. And again, we commissioned these murals. We used shears overlaid over silk for a foggy effect on these draperies. That's their detail. We actually used a sheer file over shinier silk so nothing would be shiny, and did a multiple see-through layer drapery panel. This is on the beach. Again, we're now in Bethany, Delaware, and our client loved the abalone colors, so we took a lot of that cue from, this is literally, again, right on the dunes. You walk right out of, if you go through the doors on the left, you walk right into the sand and right into the beach. So we took a lot of sand colors for floors and things like that. We didn't want anything to be very perishable. We used a lot of natural cottons and linens and things that breathe well. This house hasn't changed a bit in the 10 years since we've done it. This also ran in a national magazine. Took a lot of those. It's not just what we saw through the abalone, but there were all these storms that you'd see, and you get these brilliant sunrises and sunsets where you'd see purples and magentas and all these blue-gray thundercloudy colors. So we used a lot of those colors in the house. This is the master bedroom with that sort of little Chesney's fireplace and the metal fireplace over there that turns on. You don't have to actually fill that with cubes that burn magically, but Chesney sells them, and you can have fire when you want it just by pressing, again, one of these, which is all they wanted to do at the beach. So they've got a little bowl of fire to fall asleep with, which is kind of nice. And then this is another bowl of sorts that looks out. This is their Calgon moment. I told you we were close to the water, and you can see how when I get an ocean vista, I always want the water to line up with that outside-inside liaison. And you can hear those waves crashing even if you can't see them, if there's no full moon at night, as you would have that take me away moment in this wonderful floating tub. This ran in Milieu magazine. This is a home in Potomac, Maryland, that we did for, again, lovely clients. We're now doing a brand new home for them on the Chesapeake. We just finished the architecturals. We're getting ready to break ground. We're very excited about it. Milieu came in and shot this, and I wanted to show this client was on, you may have seen this house actually, at the Old Anglers Inn on Canal Road. There's a big stone Georgian house on a hill right by Old Anglers Inn. That's this house. And he grew up in a more modestly scaled home there, our homeowner, and they tore the other home down and built on the side of the home he grew up in. And he's not young. He's not young, and he's lived on this plot of land all of his life. Their grandchildren come there now and stay with them. And he grew up literally on the same soil, and they wanted all the gardens. He could look out and see trees that his grandmother had planted, that his mother had planted, that his dad, and we wanted to celebrate all of that. So here we are at the front door, and you can see, even just clipping, it's a trick I do all the time, just clip a branch. Do your pruning and bring it inside. Don't throw it away. At least let it live another week or so in a vase inside, and then you can let it go. This is the foyer of that house, as Milieu magazine shot it. This is their dining room, and I created jib doors here that disappear into the butler's pantries and service areas, so that I could just enjoy these beautiful Gracie panels. As you look to the left, there are 3 sets of French doors and a trellis-covered loggia, and we have vines with beautiful white wisteria dripping that grow down, and these look like those vines that are outside that's sort of half inside and half outside, and then it opens to a beautiful full-blown exterior garden. I think I've got a picture of that coming up. The same Albemarle chairs you saw in Chicago, but look how different they look here in our Maryland garden. And the hydrangea we just literally cut outside the door and put in the garden and put here. We didn't buy any flowers for this photo shoot. We just did clippings from the garden, and that's how it works. This is part of that garden outside. And they've got 28 acres of that in Potomac on Canal Road. Who has that? So you see how mightily inspired you are by these things. And yet, too, it's not fussy. It's a mix of modern and traditional. I love to live with all things, because that's the only way you really hit that blessed point of timelessness, is to celebrate things from every era and time. And I think that's what most of us are seeing now. We don't want to be locked into a specific aesthetic. This is a library with upholstered crewel Stroheim and Roman walls, and theater inside these leather cabinets that we see here. That's on the main level. And then they have another theater elsewhere. But again, I just did clippings of the maples outside and put them in this. And there's nothing more beautiful and vernal than bringing a color nothing more. It's like a tree growing inside when you just use 3 to 5 limbs. I like the odd number, and a big tall vase. When you fill those vases with water, they're so stable you can't move them because they're so heavy from the water. It's like you poured concrete in there. I've never had one fall. I've got one on our table here in our vignette, and we can dine under the boughs of that rather than doing just a fussy little arrangement. I'm tall, I like scale, I guess. Bringing things from the outdoors in again, we found this pair of urns through Randall Tysinger Antiquarians, and we brought more garden in here. This is looking from the living room toward the foyer again, and then into a darker parlor on the other side. And then there's a color. The reason I showed this shot, I found an Ushak that had all the salmony colors of the rose garden that's outside this window. So all spring and summer and well into fall, all these salmon and vermilion colors are in roses, and also tulips earlier in the spring in the same colors. So I celebrated all those colors in the Benison fabrics that we chose for the windows here, as well as all the upholsteries that I used, that claret colored clearance house that I've got on these Dongia chairs in the forefront here, which I think is really wonderful. Again, this is the family room that looks out to, we had a lot of pine and cypress and some magnolia out there, and I kept that in the green family with a little bit of gold for punctuation. And again, we just shot this for Milieu last year, and I did this house 12 years before. It's now 13 years old. We've changed not a pillow in 12 years. So timeless design is just that. You're not going to have to redo it. If it's tethered to where it belongs, it seems to always belong there. And that, I think you have to look outside to make that work. And that's what we try to do with all these. This is actually the pool house. Again, all indoor-outdoor furniture, Genesee Sea and fireplaces and everything. But it looks like you can't be there and be wet, but you can. We do an indoor-outdoor version of all of our furniture with Tomlinson 2 and teak, and that's what this is, with drainable cushions, and that opens out to the pool. Shot through the bed. This is the master bedroom, and I think we used 380 yards of these printed Sanderson linens in 2 or 3 different patterns that we intermixed so we wouldn't get tired of the one. For the inside rim of the bed, the outside rim of the bed, the walls, I had my same ironworker that built that staircase that we were talking about earlier make my top of the bed here, and then in tole, and we had it painted. I just think it's a wonderful room, and again, done now 13 years ago, and the lady of the house told me literally in a meeting 2 weeks ago that she has never once gone into that room and not been excited. So she said it's just her favorite room in the world. She said, I can't even sleep in hotels anymore. She said, I just want to be home, which is a wonderful compliment. So her dressing room off of that, with a zebra rug that was bagged by Woolley Woolworth on a safari with the Duke of Windsor back in the day, and a chair that we bought through auction that Cary Grant gave his then wife, poor little rich girl. Again, it was from the Woolworth estate, Barbara. Anyway, they. I love things with history too, but again, we've got all these foliate patterns, even down to, it's hard to tell, but the walls are a Sanderson pattern based on camellias. And then there's a triptych of rooms on the back of that house. The two granddaughters sleep in this room. There's the enfilade we created. This is their sitting room, and then their parents, when they're visiting, sleep in this room on this side. And we used in those 3 rooms 17 different floral patterns. And to me, it works. If you find, just like when you put them all in the garden, all the flowers look good together in the garden. So just to go back to see, why can't we put all those flowers together on our interior as we plant them outside? So that, to me, shows that we can. The Fortuny showroom that I did in New York with that panel that you see here, looking outside for inside, photographs I took with the cell phone of the Fortuny factory in Venice, and blew them up, and now we have this in New York on the sliding doors, along with all the other things. And they carry our furniture line there that we do for Tomlinson, along with all these beautiful fabrics that they've been doing for about 100 years now, handmade in Venice. We did this here as the first all-green show house and home built greenhouse for a charity here in town. This is in McLean, Virginia. And again, it's stark and modern, but what I love here is how open it is to the gardens, in and out. I used a translucent screen that I made from our favorite group. I call these phantom walls again. Another garden room inspired by garden colors. This was on Bradley Boulevard as a show house room that became the cover of our second book, Inspirations, inspired by the garden and the forsythia that we cut in the garden and brought inside. I wanted to take one room and show you how in the microcosm the garden inspired that. This is a home we did in Great Falls, Virginia, inspired by the Fortuny drapery that we were using too, and the foliate patterns there. We look out into boxwood gardens, a lower terrace. These French doors have little balconettes that look into a lower garden. We brought a lot of garden statuary inside because the client was also collecting statuary for the exterior and used it as indoor decor. You can see how it seems to harmonize with this 18th century table and these beautiful old French chairs covered in that gray Watkins fabric. Close-ups of how we quilted the Fortuny on the border. My client likes Chanel purses. I like to hide them in plain sight everywhere in the house, our client's personality traits and things. And the garden and the light that came through there was so beautiful. We left the light, the drapery, translucent with a translucent muslin liner instead of using the heavy blocking, so that the sunlight would ignite the drapery panels in the day, and it worked really beautifully that way. I like taking one room and showing you all the little close-ups in the corners and the details. This is 1920s Fortuny that we found and had enough for a couple of chair seats. And we took the Fortuny patterns and did the ghost images of them on the dados of the wall, and then below that other little triangulated pattern was the other one that you had seen quilted on the borders of the drapery. The dining room did the same with more Fortuny. And we're winding down now. This is the last couple things I'm going to show you, completely different. This is that penthouse in Florida that I was talking about that ran in the November-December issue of Lux magazine. And decommissioned from the Smithsonian, I was able to buy this prehistoric fish skeleton that's still all these millions of years trying to swim out to sea from the 56th floor of this high-rise in South Beach. But the epicenter concept I did in glass here for my doors that open into this world that's inspired by the view. Oh, these watery colors, even more of a pearl shape on a pillow, or there's a lot of shimmer to the silks that we put on the sofa to the left. There's a two-way television, and there are television through that two-way mirror over there. So that comes on through the mirror, and we can enjoy that. But there's all that sky and sand color and the gray for the fog that we played. We did more terrazzo here. I wanted to get the outdoors in here with the wind blowing from the ocean, so I commissioned the sculpture of this tree to look like it's being blown by the wind. And we found this Andre Arbus original blown glass piece with rock crystal inside that was like a bubble coming up through the water, we thought, or Glinda, the good witch, maybe descending. a sea urchin concept for our light here in the dining room that was the cover of that magazine, looking out from the family room. Seaweed colors in the study here that opens up to another area here that to the sides of a shimmer of a fish with the glass tile we thought looked like fish scales. So again, that sort of sea theme that permeated our space, looking down hallways, from the bedroom back toward the hall to the living, back toward bedroom, how it opens up into this. And then again, the colors that we used here that were that sort of foggy, early morning, watery tonality that we played throughout and in the bathroom with the stone and another tub and a waterfall feature wall. A home we did in California, in Beverly Hills. The library looked out to, again, cypress and eucalyptus trees, and we used those colors on the Fortuny and for the custom hide rugs that we did there. A home in Centerville that we did with that had bright tulip and rose gardens, again in these orangey colors, that ran in Southern Home magazine this last fall. The last pictures I'm showing you here are a couple that I've taken again with my cell phone of projects that we've just finished. We just finished this one more recently up at the Greenbrier, so it's not been published yet, but this is the two-story foyer area of the home that we did in the country for these clients. And we were doing a lot more woodsy thing. We're up in the mountains. They spend more of their time up there in the winter and the holidays, so we use wintry sort of Scandinavian colors in our woods and things, and then did loft things that had almost a Finnish or Swedish feel to them, because this is up above a spa where we have the Swedish saunas and the plunge pools and things in the sauna, in the spa below. Nantucket, I just finished this for Karen Frist in Nantucket and Sconset, a 1700s house that we used only the colors of fog and the Nantucket grays for all the bedrooms and colors, a little bit of blue that crept into some of the master, birds, things like that. But so inspired by what we see through the seagulls and things, that what we see through the window, what we see outside here in Nantucket, that we carried to the island home. This is Blackberry Farm. I've used, in the process of installing the second half of this next week, 2 weeks from now. And you're seeing all these windows that look out into the woods there and outside of Knoxville. It's about half an hour outside of Knoxville. Tree bark inspired, these trees inspired the custom rugs we designed here. All old barn wood for our family and keeping room walls that are inspired by so many of these old unpainted barns that are in our country vistas there. The master bedroom, just clean and stoic and simple, but it seems to belong there in the mountains. This house is just one shot I had of that. This is the one that's being shot for House Beautiful. I did this with Anki Barnes here in town, over on Dexter off Foxhall, for the same couple that had that house that we had on Capitol Hill before. And this is the one that's being shot in a couple of weeks there. And then the last house we're showing, the very last one, is either the May or the June, July issue of Veranda. We don't know if it's covered yet or not. This is a home we did in Atlanta on 20 Valley Road, and a very glamorous house, a very glamorous couple that we designed the house for. The reflective and matte finishes on the floors we designed here. The Brancusi light fixture I found out in California. But see their garden coming through the living room, and see how that seems to come right through those French doors into the space. And to celebrate that, I did a lacquered ceiling that would almost make the windows look and the doors look like they were two-story, and sort of, again, point out the verdant garden beyond there. Taking foliate patterns, again, through patterns that we chose from Fortuny, and in this case, Sabina May Braxton. Antique 1950s Murano lamps, and a new one I commissioned in this sort of ochre color. In the living room here, they had a beautiful collection of art, including this Rauschenberg that we put over the mantle there. But again, what we're celebrating in each instance is this garden. This is a more out-of-the-box, avant-garde home, but it's exactly who our client was. That's a close-up of that 1920s reverse painted screen that we found that was like the goldfish pond with all the watery feel through the door on the other side there. And if this will work, I may have ended oh, there it goes. This is the library, and there were Japanese maples outside the wall here that some of the year are sort of a cognac color and then turned to that bright red. So we used those two colors from photographs and mixed our paints. and we lacquered this library in those colors, which I think turned out in an incredibly verve modern way. The gentleman of the house, this was his favorite room. He said, that's where I'm going to go in and drink my best scotch. You know, I'm going there and spend time for that. The garden room here, I mirrored the ceiling. I got an idea from my client's big diamond, and decided, because the ceiling in this room, because it was an existing Norman Askins house, was only 8.5 feet. So I added verticality to that, and I took one of those screens that you saw from my Arterias collection, put it in the window, and it looks like the garden is growing through that screen. And I used that in this tiny little garden room. And she says this is where this room was designed for her to have drinks with her girlfriends before they went out for dinner. She calls it her martini room, as a garden, her martini garden room. And the house had belonged to a botanist before, and the gardens are individual specimens of things, not unlike elements that you might have here. Just really beautiful, but things that grew so well in the warmer climate there. And then I took those same screens and put them in the kitchen, on those windows, in a very modern kitchen that looked out to green gardens there. The breakfast room area there for the two of them at the mirror with You Never Dine Alone, that opens into the formal dining room. Somehow, there. Opens into the formal dining room with these leather doors. And then again, you get to see the Gracie panels that I did here with the gleam of the silver, and all of these beautiful outdoor things tendril into the interior beautifully. This is an area for tea, and then I chose this old rock pattern console for that, Jean-Michel Franck. The master bedroom, we said, is like a glamorous treehouse up on the second level with its own private balcony that looks out over the garden. And I designed the oval piece here, again, like the oval fish pool that's out in the vista, lined up directly with the headboard of the bed. In that point that I did for the waterfall of that Fortuny falling out of the ceiling, that's lined up directly to my exterior, through the goldfish pond, down those stairs that you saw in the living room below, and ultimately to a swimming pavilion up in the higher point of the back garden. It was 9 acres in downtown Atlanta. And you had a lot to play with in your view that inspired everything we did here. So close-ups on the bedside there. We went out and picked the roses, the Orsini pattern on the walls. As you're looking from the bathroom into the bedroom, this is what you would see with the custom doors we did with Stan Dixon Architects. These beautiful, this fragrance of these wonderful flowers that we brought in from the garden was so wonderful during that photo shoot. I won't soon forget her wow and crazy bathroom that was just for her. I designed with Patricia Fields, who designs all the costumes for Sex and the City, who was her best friend. The lady that I was designing this house for is the lady that all of those clothes were made for Sarah Jessica Parker for, that inspired Patricia to do all the clothes. She would do them on my client, send them to Sarah Jessica Parker. She would like them, and then they would become Carrie Bradshaw's wardrobe. So we're going to end with her tub she chose. She's a small lady, by her window with her banana trees and palms outside. And then we found, when I was with Patricia in New York, who has ties with Bergdorf's and lots of places like that. These were old Bergdorf's props, these brass palm trees, and we bought them from them in their prop department and brought the outside in yet again, one more time, at this window in Atlanta. Thank you so much. Thank you. A pleasure. And we may have gone a minute or two over. If anyone has a question, I can speak with you here or upstairs.
The house at the end of Blackberry Farm, is that rental property?
That is not. That's a private. We've done rental properties for Blackberry Farm too that you can rent, and it's an in-between world. There are some that are only rented, some that people have privately invested into, but they rent them via Blackberry, and then some that are just private. That was a private one. We've done 3 that are quasi-private that you can also rent. Yes. Yes?
Are you trained, or is your brain just...
Am I trained?
Trained.
Oh,
Where is
I
your
went to
brain?
design school, but I don't think, I mean...
How did you're the whole spectrum of traditional...
I think it's because if you use that whole spectrum of traditional and contemporary, of old and new, of east and west, of modern and ancient, if you can mix all that with a plum in an interior, It belongs everywhere and nowhere in particular. And I love that because it's so hospitable. It makes anyone coming from any culture, time, anything they love, they find something in that home that is for them. And I think that seems, at the end of the day, very hospitable, and a lot of our clients really celebrate that concept.
Have you ever been asked to do something that really offends you?
If that happened, I guess during the interview process, I took care of that. I'd say I may have been asked. I didn't actually have to do it. Here's what I'll say. There have been a couple of things. Like I remember one time, this person wanted everything in 22 karat gold, every wall, everything. And I just knew I couldn't do it for them, and I referred them to someone else. I just knew I wasn't their person. It wasn't something I felt like I would be the best to do for them. I've turned down certain projects. I don't turn down a lot because a lot of the ones that at first seem challenging, you're like, oh, I don't want to do that, might be the very one that you learn the most on. Because when it's hard, when it's easy, and in a way it's all easy, but when you don't really have to think, when you're not challenged on something, you don't grow. And if you don't grow during the course of your career, you sort of repeat yourself. And I try, as I hope you see through what we do here, not to fall into a lazy rut where I'm doing the same thing over and over. I look at each project and each client as a new opportunity to do something we've never done before, and hope that I continue to work that way until I stop working, period. Thank you.
What vitamins do you take?
Do you know I don't take vitamins or anything? I probably need to start. I had my last birthday in my 50s in January. I'll be 60 next January the 19th. And so I think I'm going to have to start taking vitamins. I'm going to have to start doing something. I'm not a big sleeper. I do most of the drawings at night. I do a lot of the plotting and planning because in the day you're out in the field or you're working with your staff or you've got sunlight so you can see your color and do your color stories and color selections and all that. So all my drawing and all my deep thinking that requires not being interrupted is done at night. So I think a lot of it is just who you are genetically. My dad was exactly like that. He was a scientist, but he was exactly that way. And my sister's that way. We don't sleep. 3 hours maybe a night at the most, ever. So that's how we can get a lot of work done.
Thank you. That was fabulous.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.